Hello everyone. So in today's video, we're going to be moving into figure drawing, which I feel like is the good next step after the past few videos where I was going through different parts of the body and the specific anatomy of those parts. So the first reason why we do figure drawing is one, it loosens you up. So you're able to start using not just your wrist and not be as stiff when drawing, but start to actually move your arm around and try to get some more movement when you're drawing, a little bit more freedom. And number two, it allows your figures to look more realistic because just the improvement of the flow makes it so that your drawings have that flow kind of show through in the figures themselves. So they don't look as stiff when you're drawing characters and people in different poses and actions. It also helps to improve your three-dimensionality or seeing something in 3D and understanding how that body part would look when it's moved in a different way and things like that. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is like the steps that I take when I do figure drawings. So the first thing that's important is the line of action. So usually people say that when drawing the human figure, in general, the movements are either in like an arc C shape, an I shape, so when they're standing around or something like that, or an S shape. When I first learned figure drawing, I thought of these as like the spine being bent and moved around. But as I practice more, I'm starting to understand that it's not only just that, it can also just be the side of someone's body. So let's start with drawing a simple figure of a person standing. So this eye is just going to be their spine, and I'm not going to change that for this one. So now we add basically the stick figure elements to it. Not like this type of stick figure, we're going to add the shoulder line and the waistline. And then from here, you could add the neck and the head. Because this shoulder is up, I'm going to make it so the arm kind of is on the person's waist. And this one is just going to be dangling down. Perfect. The legs, I'm going to put like a area where I think the floor and legs will probably be. So the legs, I put a little bit of width in the legs too. Because you might notice that the legs kind of come out a little more than how you might draw them now, or when you might have drawn in the beginning. You kind of draw the legs coming straight out the body this way, but there's a little bit of a gap that comes with the legs too. So, and I use duck bills for the feet. You could even see that the way I'm drawing the skeleton of the figure itself, it's also in like a little bit of a flowy way. I'm trying my best not to be stiff. I'm just pretending like I don't actually care about these lines, just to make sure it looks more loose and more fluid than it actually is. Now, once I add that, and before I add the anatomy of the human body, I just want to be able to draw this in more simple shapes, so more three-dimensional and more simple. So I'm going to basically just add where I know the general anatomy of the rib cage would be. The pelvis, I don't really need to draw, but I could draw the center if it helps me. Now, for this, I'm going to add the neck, and I'm going to add muscle here. I'm going to add a circle for the shoulders, a tube for the arm, another tube for the arm, hands positioning, then this here. So this is my shape for the torso. So you could either draw it as a tube or a cube. It doesn't really matter. It matters what feels easiest and kind of more natural to you. So you might have noticed that I drew through the arms here. So what we're doing now is we're adding that volume. The only reason why I'm able to draw this from imagination is because I've practiced drawing cylinders and cubes and using reference to kind of draw people in different poses. And then using that knowledge plus my ability to see things in more 3 dimensions, using these simple sphere, cylinder, and cube, I'm able to apply that to this figure, even though it's just directly from imagination. So legs is a tapered cylinder. And then I like to add a little boxy shape here for the knees. And the bottom of the legs, the calf area, is also a tapered cylinder. I am adding a little bit of anatomy, but it's better if you're able to just draw things as simple shapes first. For example, like these drawings right here, it's all simple shapes, sphere, tubes, and cubes for specific parts. So it's very important that you figure out your own shorthand to simplifying your figures, or simplifying anything, honestly. So once I have this is where I'll start adding my anatomy. So I already did it here because I'm just used to just adding, using my shortcuts. But now I'm gonna add that little muscle tone of the arm, tricep muscles. So I'm adding the anatomy that I've learned on top of these 3D shapes to figure out, to make it have that little bit more realism than just being, you know, just these 3D simple objects. Arms, adding a thumb here. Gonna add a little bit of anatomy to the legs. So in general, people do recommend going to figure drawing classes and stuff, and I do recommend that also because it helps you to be able to see the volume directly instead of when you look at a picture, it's more of a flattened version of whatever that 3D shape actually was. So that's one of the main reasons you should try going to figure drawing classes, or even looking at videos that have like a round, like that rotates the model. It'll help to see these shapes in 3 dimensions. But another thing you can do is actually using a reference of, maybe it's someone doing sports or someone doing anything, honestly, is to first draw the person or whatever you're drawing in these simple 3D shapes, and then turning it a little just to see if you can. So let's see, if this character, if I were to turn him sideways, it would just be a cylinder. I'm gonna be really quick here. Chest is basically a cube, and spheres for thing. This arm, because I'm gonna do this side. So this arm, sorry, I'm just gonna add a little bit more anatomy to help me a bit. This is a cylinder, and we know it can go like this. Add first leg, second leg. You can see sometimes I'm not even using 3-dimensional shapes, but I'm just using flat basic, flat like a square and shapes to figure out the 3-dimensionality later. And then the legs. This would be thumb. And I'm gonna make it so the arm kind of pops out a little. Cool. Just so you can see the other arm. Once you get the basic steps of looking at a figure, starting with the line of action and then moving into more three-dimensional or 2D flat shapes that represent the body but don't actually have the anatomy. You then add the anatomy on top of that, and you could also just indicate anatomy using shading, which is mainly what I usually do. And you'll be able to get a fairly non-stiff, kind of more movement-based kind of figure in your drawings. So here's another one that I'm just going to do as an example, not from reference. So I'm going to draw this head here, and I may try to do like a Spider-Man figure because it is moving. So I'm doing simple shapes, trying to get the figure to look right. So let's say this is the head, this is the shoulder, and this is the waistline, and this is my line of action. I'm gonna add the arm like this. Even my arm, I'm trying to do it more line of action, like in a way. And I'm gonna make the other arm kind of just face down. And then the legs, this is one knee right there. And then I'm gonna do a little bit of foreshortening. This is a foot, and the other knee. So you can see I'm using my shortcuts by adding the pelvis, even though I haven't, drawn out my stick figure fully. I'm starting to skip a few steps as I go, because I now have the ability to do that after practicing this way for a long time. Then the other knee, and I'm going to put the leg here. You probably see his foot there. Cool. Now I'm going to add eyes. Nose is going to be like this. There is no emotion in these eyes, but that's fine. Here. This is the chest, so I'm going to make sure my neck looks stretched. There. I'm going to add the three-dimensional shapes now. So that's our torso. We have a little gap that goes to the legs. Then from here, we know this is going to be one big cylinder. I'm going to add a little U because there is a butt. Another cylinder here. Then the other leg, we're going to have foreshortened. So I'm going to try to get the shape of the toe in there, and then the foot. We know where the knee is. Then, there you go. The first arm cylinder, drawing lightning because it's behind. And then I'm going to draw the second part of this arm. I'm gonna not do it the same way that I drew it here because that doesn't make sense. So I'm just gonna make this another dangly arm because sometimes that's cool. Then I'm gonna add fingers splayed out there. So this is my three-dimensional kind of character from my line of action. Now I'm going to add anatomy. So I know this is the deltoid. I like to see these as basic flat shapes that kind of have these three-dimensionality. He's going to have, just because of the strength of the person, they're going to have traps or neck muscles. And a little bit of this here. I'm using shading. That. The fingers go like that. This is going to be side, so we can go, this is the center of the body, so I'm going to add a little belly button there. I'm going to add some shading to indicate where the rib cage is. A little bit more anatomy on the arms. So you can see even here I'm trying to be as flowy as possible. Some shading for where the leg bone would be. There we go. Perfect. There. So that was a more complicated pose, but I drew it using the same steps as I drew this more simple pose. Once I do that, now I kind of just want to talk about ways of practicing. So the first way of practicing is literally just to look at a bunch of references and draw their line of actions and their like stick figure poses. This is why people say do 5-minute figure drawings and stuff, because just being able to draw figures like this without any without worrying about the anatomy and stuff, you'll be able to get some, like, you'll get more confident, and it kind of helps with building the skill to add the three-dimensionality to it and seeing how things move in space, right? So once you do that for a bit, you'll then add the dimensionality to it without worrying about the anatomy. It's another way for you to kind of lower the expectations while getting a result that actually may look pretty all right, like this one. So without the anatomy and just the simple shapes, you do that for a few poses. That would be like your 10 minutes, even probably even like 5 to 10 minute poses, a bunch of figures that way. And then from there you would add anatomy. So this is while after you learn the anatomy, while you're looking at the figure, you'll see a lot of shapes and see how the muscle works, and you'll add that on once you understand how to draw a person in 3 dimensions, and have that non-stiff looking posing when in your drawings. Another thing that I like to do is I draw people doing sports, and when they're doing those sports, they're all dressed up, but what I do is I then kind of draw them in this type of way without their clothes. There you could guess the anatomy for everything that you can't actually see, and having all the exposed parts of their body. So if it's like a basketball player or like a runner or something, you'll see the bottoms. You'll usually see their calves, you'll see their arms, but you won't see their chests, right? So you'll then be able to guess where those muscles are and how they kind of connect and puzzle together with the other parts of the body. So in these examples, you'll basically see me go through those steps. So this first one, I go with the line of action, and then I add a basic 2D version of the torso. Now I add those 3D shapes of the arms and legs and hands. And once I complete that, then I start to worry about anatomy. So I'm adding the anatomy of the shoulder and how it connects to the chest, the hands, the arms, the shape of the head. You might notice I started with a cube instead of a sphere because it was easier for me to use that in this kind of pose, because we see more of the side of the head. And then once you're done that, you have a little bit more fun and you add your shading and things like that. 2 figures where I did the practice of guessing the anatomy from a figure who's wearing clothes. So this first one is of a football player and he's basically running. So I started, and they're wearing like a kind of a hoodie and some shorts. So as usual, from looking at that, I used that as hints to draw a person, to draw this pose. So I started off with my basic shapes, my line of action, then my basic shapes, then I'm building the anatomy on it, more like a puzzle piece, using the few hints I have to try to draw this figure in a more anatomically correct way. You might have noticed that I had the shoe there and I had to release it, just to be able to show that person more correctly. And basically that's all you need when you're drawing a figure. And even for imagination, once you're able to do drawing people, and once you do a few like figure drawing sessions, whether it's you looking at references on Google or anywhere that has like actual images, not AI, or if you go to a life drawing class, if you have the ability, that's also an amazing way because it helps you to see the volumes a little bit more without seeing things flattened from an image. You'll be able to draw like anything from your imagination, honestly, because once you understand the 3-dimensionality of things and being able to simplify figures into basic shapes, it'll kind of guide you into applying those steps in everything you draw. So I hope this video was useful. Next week I'm probably going to make a video on more the movement of the human body. So if you're interested in that, like and subscribe. If you have any comments or things I should fix in my videos, let me know.